Sometimes I think it's overpreached that we should all be well-rounded and we should be good at a lot of things, when in fact, to be successful, super successful at an elite level, you just need to be amazing at one thing. And the sooner you can find that one thing, the better. A world-class salesperson is going to ask insightful questions of the potential buyer and is going to listen to what they say and be a world-class listener so that they can figure out whether or not this home is a good fit.
What up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. And guys, episode number 120 with Alan Stein Jr. And Alan is an elite performance trainer, coach. The guy is awesome. This is a fun, dynamic episode. And, we just had a great conversation. I'll be honest with you. And Alan talks to us about the difference between, the average person. It could be this average salesperson to the elite performer salesperson that just crushes it. The difference from the guy that does pickup games at the local YMCA basketball to the professional NBA player. Alan actually has trained people like Kevin Durant and other NBA elite players, professional athletes. We have an awesome conversation about LeBron James, right? And why so many of us try to emulate LeBron in our business or in our world when we really shouldn't be doing that. We should be trying to focus on what we're the best at. And he really create some clarity around that and why so many of us struggle because we try to be like LeBron. And LeBron is LeBron and he's an anomaly, to be honest with you. We all just can't do that. So anyway, it's fantastic how to compete against the best competition. And here's something I loved. He said, we need to master our skill sets so that we can perform in real speed against the best competition. In my mind, this is what it's all about, because I know so many people have got really, really good at their game, their scripts, their diet, whatever, understanding their product. When they're against the other elite performers or the best of the best competition, where do they fall? And that is the difference now between the average and then the elite. So I loved this conversation, this episode. I think it's fantastic. Alan has a new book coming out in January. Check out his new book. It's called Raise Your Game. It's going to be on Audible, so you can get yourself a free copy on Audible. If you don't yet have an Audible account, just go to davidsfreebook.com. Again, davidsfreebook.com. Get yourself a copy of Alan's book. And listen, guys, this is a great interview. I had a ton of fun, and I hope you enjoy as much as I did. You rock. Enjoy. Hey, Masters. Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. Today, we have a special treat. We're with Alan Stein Jr. Alan is a coach, a speaker, an author of a book. What's the name of your book, Alan?
Raise Your Game.
Raise Your Game. I absolutely love that title. Alan also has expertise in improving organizational performance, cohesion, and accountability. Those are all things we're used to talking about here on Path to Mastery. He's also spent 15 years plus working with the highest performing basketball players on the planet, including NBA superstar Kevin Durant. Wow, Kevin Durant, that's amazing. I want to talk to you about that as well. I play a lot of pickup basketball, but I know I'm certainly not going to make it to the NBA. But it's funny. Some of the guys that show up on the pickup games, the way they play, you would think that they'd make it to the NBA. What's the difference between that guy that just dominates the pickup game that is, 6'6", to the person that actually makes it to the NBA, And I want to get to that question in a minute. He also travels the world teaching organizations how to utilize the same strategies in business that the elite athletes used to perform at world-class levels. Alan is a amicably divorced father of twin sons, Luke and Jack, and a daughter, Lila. He lives just outside Washington, D.C. Alan, thank you for being on Path to Mastery.
Absolutely my pleasure. It's wonderful to connect with you.
So I want to jump back to that question regarding somebody that is on the pickup basketball court that is like amazing, that you would say, wow, this guy can actually play on the NBA, to somebody that actually can play on the NBA, like Kevin Durant, for example. What's the difference?
For the most part, in that analogy, it has to do with the competition that you're playing against. I mean, Kevin Durant is able to do those things against the best players in the world. And certainly, no offense to the other guys that are playing pickup with you all, but they're probably not quite on that level. So it'd be akin to me going and playing a group of first graders, I'd probably dominate as well and average 60 points a game. But when you put me against the best competition, then we'd have an issue there. And that's the thing with a sport like basketball. I mean, certainly you have the mastery of your own skill sets and becoming the best shooter, rebounder, defender, passer, ball handler you can be. But ultimately, it's can you perform those skills at full speed against the defender and against the world's best competition. So that's probably the biggest difference. But I would imagine that the 6'6" guy that's dominating your pickup games is probably a really good basketball player. So that's no slight on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of offended when you're saying I'm not that level of competition.
Yeah, well, at least across the board. And I didn't mean to compare you to a first grader either.
No, I'm kidding. No. It's all good. Honestly, yeah, it's probably pretty accurate when it comes to that. So yeah, competition's obviously important, but you got to think some of these guys that made it to the NBA at that level probably started on these courts, right?
Absolutely.
So what's the difference between the guy that started on this court and never went anywhere with it, but he also maybe had the ability, right, physically, but he wasn't able to make it to that high level of achievement?
When it comes to elite level basketball players, there's kind of four major buckets that we'll look at. And I always referred to it as a pyramid. The bottom part of the pyramid would be their body, their athletic ability, their mind-body connection, their coordination, their power, their strength, spatial awareness. So on that level, you've got body. And a good portion of that is genetically predetermined at birth. I mean, clearly, LeBron James was born with some physical tools that I was not born with. That's the body side of things. Then you move up on the pyramid, and the next would be actual skill. So now we're actually talking about your wheelhouse here, about the path to mastery. How well can this person shoot, pass, rebound, defend, and handle the ball? And can they do that against competition at full speed and at full contact? Then you move up another level, and this is where we really start to weed out some of the players as we move up levels. Then you have the mental side, their basketball IQ. How well do they understand the game and how to play? So they've got some great athleticism, they've got some great skills, but do they know how and when to use those skills to be at their advantage? And then part of that also is their mental toughness, their grit, their resilience. So that's the third pillar. And then at the very top, I just call that their heart. That's their motor, that's their passion, their determination, their stick-to-itiveness. And that's usually the hardest part to teach someone. If we're going to use basketball as an example, either you love the game or you don't. And I know that there's a scale in between, but I found that the players that make it to the highest level, they love to play the game. They have a passion for it. They have a very high IQ and understand how to play the game. They're mentally tough, so they have tremendous grit. They've worked on their skills till they're becoming closer to mastering those skills, and they have the athleticism and the raw talent. And when you put all four of those things together, then you have the potential to be an NBA or an elite level player. If you're missing any of those, then it just means your ceiling is lower for what you can do. So, an example of your 6'6" friend that plays pickup without ever having seen him play or knowing anything about him, he just might be lacking in a couple of those buckets. It also could be just a few degrees. Yeah. It's like that old analogy that, you need to get over 212 degrees for water to start boiling. So you could be at 211 and it doesn't start boiling yet. Yeah. He could be on the cusp of being an elite player and he's just one or two things short.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is. I mean, because obviously the athleticism's there, the ability, right? I mean, he's 6'6", so obviously if you're going to make it to the NBA, you're usually going to be fairly tall. That's a requirement. How important, I guess the question is, and this is a great lead into how this transitions or transfers to business, is it mental toughness? Or, you talked about mental toughness, mindset, heart. How much of it is that compared to the other part, the athleticism, the physicalness, all that?
Well, in basketball, especially to play at the NBA level, the physical side does count and it does matter. I mean, you have to have some of those raw materials, but usually the separator is going to be that mental side. Your friend that's 6'6" and is athletic, he's not the only 6'6" athletic guy that didn't make it to the NBA. I mean, I could walk outside right now and throw a rock and I'd probably hit one. So there's lots of guys that were born with certain advantages to playing a sport like basketball, but they never actualized it. And that's when then you have a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. They were born with amazing tools, but they didn't rest on the fact that they were born with amazing tools. Then they started to work on their skills. Then they started to develop the IQ. Then they developed the passion and the resilience to be great. So they had all of them. I'm certainly not saying that if you happen to be born with some speed and some power and some height, that you're going to walk yourself to the NBA, because nothing could be further from the truth. There's too many people like that out there. That's why those other parts of the pyramid are incredibly important.
And we're going to jump into the transition soon. Think about what we're talking about. So now let's talk about all the people that do make it to the NBA. They have these four pillars you talked about. Now the people that stand out in the NBA, like the LeBron James, the Kevin Durants, right? The Michael Jordan, going back a bit. What's the difference between those guys? How do they stand out so much? Why are they elite?
It's the same model, except they're in the upper 0.01 percentile of that model. I mean, their passion and drive is a little bit more than everyone else's. Their understanding of the game and their basketball IQ is a little sharper than everyone else's. Their skill sets, shooting and passing and rebounding and defending, is a little bit better than everyone else's. And that's what it is. When you get to that level, now you're talking about very small percentage points. And, you know, another thing to think about in the NBA, the guys you just mentioned, they're actually the rare occasion in the NBA. When you have a player like LeBron who can do just about anything well on the court, there's only about a dozen guys like that in the NBA. Everyone else in the NBA is actually a role player. And by role player, I mean they have one specific skill set that they do at an elite level, a world-class level. Sometimes they have a secondary skill set, but that's about it. I don't know how closely your listeners follow the NBA, but you could take somebody like Kyle Korver or JJ Redick. Those guys are sharpshooters. They catch and shoot. And that's their one skill that they do at an elite level. You know, if you know the NBA and you mention the name Kyle Korver, you never talk about his ball handling or his passing or his rebounding or his defending, because he's mediocre at those things. And I don't say that to slight him. He's been able to take one specific skill set, catching and shooting, and make that so world class that he's able to play in the greatest league in the world because he can do that one thing. And that's really the lesson to learn. Is sometimes I think it's overpreached that we should all be well-rounded and we should be good at a lot of things, when in fact, to be successful, super successful at an elite level, you just need to be amazing at one thing. And the sooner you can find that one thing, the better. And you could go down the list in the NBA. There's guys that get paid $15 million a year and their one skill set is rebounding or their one skill set is defending. I think it's important to remember that, because most of us, and I'm obviously putting myself in that category, are not going to be the LeBron James of whatever it is we're trying to do. But every one of us has the potential to be the Kyle Korver of what we're trying to do and do one thing better than everybody else.
I love that you brought that up, because it's so true. And the reality is a lot of us will try to be the LeBron James, right? Which is the anomaly, because we can't. And now let's transition to our business, right? It's the same conversation. What you talked about, the role player, right? You have everybody on the team has a specific strategy or skill or whatever they bring to the table. Talk to us about that. How does this now transfer to our business?
Well, when we go to the business side, it's really the same pyramid, except for the most part, we remove the physical component. I mean, I'm a big believer, though, that mind and body and emotion and all are directly connected. So I still believe that it's in anyone's best interest to be healthy, to be fit, to do things like get sleep and eat well so that they can improve longevity and vitality. I think they will up-level everything else that you're capable of. But clearly, you don't need to be 6'9" and be able to dunk to start your own business. I mean, so the physical component gets removed to a degree, but you still have to use the rest of the pyramid. You still have to have the skills of your business. So instead of shooting, passing, rebounding, and defending, maybe it's technical skills. You know, you write code. It's emotional skills, emotional intelligence. You know, you're empathetic and you're a world-class listener. Those kind of replace the shooting, passing, and rebounding. And then, of course, you move up to the IQ. You have to understand your business. You have to understand the industry that you're in and the ebbs and flows of that. And then, of course, at the top, you have to be incredibly passionate about what it is that you're doing. In essence, every business solves a problem. That's why they're in business. They solve a problem for people, and they either solve a smaller problem that a lot of people have, or they solve a really complicated, hard problem that a few people have. But either way, that's what a business does. And that doesn't matter if it's a product or a service, you're in the problem-solving business. So you have to be incredibly passionate about solving that specific problem for your target market. And again, when you go back to the role player, think of it like this. You've got Amazon and you've got Google. They're kind of the LeBron James of business because everyone in the world needs Google and everyone in the world needs Amazon. But most other businesses are very specific. They don't try to serve everyone on the planet. They serve a very specific niche, whatever their demographic may be. And that makes up the vast majority of businesses out there. They solve a specific problem for a specific target audience. And the more they can specialize and know that, the better they'll be. So most businesses are the Kyle Korver of business. And then you've got the LeBrons in your Amazon and your Google and even Nike to a degree.
A lot of our listeners, the majority of our listeners are salespeople.
Love it.
Most real estate sales. So, I think a lot of us get really good at sales, but we're not, they're not so great at paperwork or they're not so great at details, or they're not great at leading other people.
Yeah.
I see that as one of the challenges when we do start trying to go from being a salesperson to building a business.
For sure. Well, I love that you brought that up. A good portion of the work I do is either with executives and leaders in business, so managers, supervisors, executive staffs. But then the other one that I do a ton of work with is folks in sales. And I found that folks in sales, this message from, say, basketball to business resonates really well with them because folks in sales understand how important their habits are and they respect the process and they're numbers driven. There's a lot of similarity between the two. But with what you just brought up, a couple things come to mind. The moment you have the resources to be able to delegate some of that other stuff out, the better off you'll be. So if you don't like the paperwork part or the marketing part or some of the other things that it takes to sell real estate at a high level, you just want to sell. Well, the sooner you can assemble a team, even if they're part-time, to take those things off of your plate, the better, because that means you can put all of your time, energy, and focus into the one thing that you do really, really well, which is sell real estate. So every minute that you spend doing paperwork or doing the things that are not in your strength zone is moments that you're not spending in what you do best. And I know that that's tough, especially if you're first starting out, if you're kind of a solopreneur, you're on your own. At times you have to do a little bit of everything, just as any other business startup would have to do. But the sooner you can pay someone and delegate those other things and you live right in your strength zone, the better off you'll be. It's almost like you have to take a lateral step in order to take a huge step forward. You might have to spend some of your profit on these other things, but that will allow you to scale at a much, much higher level.
It's sometimes tougher for somebody to actually make those investments in the beginning. How does somebody break through that? Like, how do you get to that place where, is it just, okay, I know I'm at my ceiling, I can't physically do anymore, mentally do anymore? How does somebody know it's time to make that transition?
The advice I give to young people all of the time, and this is whether it's my own children or when I was working in basketball and I was talking to players, when you're looking for what it is that you want to do for your career, you need to find what it is that you're good at, and you need to find what it is that you love to do and find where those two things intersect. That's your strength zone. So when we're talking about folks in sales and real estate, they've kind of found the thing that they're good at and that they love to do. So they should be very thankful that they found that strength zone. But if you break it down, they don't love to do the paperwork part. And they're probably not even that good at the paperwork part. So that's where we actually have the issue.
But let me jump in for a second. Because listen, a lot of the listeners, I know I built the number one team in my MLS. I've worked with hundreds of different agents. A lot of them think that that is where they're best, doing the paperwork and doing the contracts, not realizing, Alan, that it's actually preventing them from doing more. Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely makes sense.
And what do you say to those people?
Well, I believe in that case, if it is in fact true that they're not world class at some of those other tasks, then it takes a combination of self-awareness and it takes humility, that you have to be aware to know that every minute I spend doing paperwork and contracts are minutes I'm not spent showing houses and selling. You have to know that, and you have to have the humility to admit that, you know what, I could actually pay someone part-time and they would do a better job with paperwork and a better job with crossing the T's and dotting the I's on these contracts than I would. They need to look at that. That is not a sign of weakness. Admitting that you're not the best at something is definitely not a sign of weakness. It's actually the smartest thing you can do because, again, that allows you to put your time, energy, and effort into the things that you do best. And that's what any smart team would do, and that's how they need to view it. They need to view it as a team. In order for us to sell the most houses in 2019, what do we need to do? Well, I need to be the one that's out there selling because I'm the best salesperson, and you need to be the one that's writing the contracts because you have such an eye for detail. You do a great job with that. And this person over here needs to really focus on our marketing and our social media to get the word out so that I'll have more houses to show. And if each one of us on our little 3-person team in this hypothetical example, if each one of us stays in our lane and plays our position and does what we're capable of doing at the best, then collectively we will sell the most houses that we're capable of. And
all right,
that level of specialization is what most people should be working for. Now, if someone loves writing contracts and loves doing some of the other stuff and they're good at it, then there's nothing wrong with them being able to divide. I'm not saying that all of us can only do one thing, but more times than not in business, there are things on our plate that we don't like doing and we're not very good at. And that makes no sense to spend time on those two things because we'll be mediocre at best with those.
Masters, I hope you're enjoying the episode, and I'm going to get you right back to the show. Couple opportunities. First, here's your one place to master FSBOs and expireds. Guys, you're going to get the expired full kit, and I'm going to give you the scripts that you need to be successful with for sale by owners, whether it's Zillow leads, Make Me Move, makes no difference, or it's just a FSBO at the corner that you want to pop by and say hello to. Everything you need to be successful, my friends, with FSBOs and expireds. Your complete kit, only $149. Schoolforrealtors.com. That's it, schoolforrealtors.com. And second, guys, if you love podcasts, which obviously you do, you're listening to this, you're going to love Audible. Audible has maybe not every book you can think of, but has amazing library of the best books out there. You can get yourself a free Audible book, free, absolutely free, like FREE, from going to davidsfreebook.com. Just go to davidsfreebook.com. I'll even give you a recommendation. Right now, I went back to some old school. I'm listening to Harv Eker's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It's been fantastic to kind of regroup with that book, re-energize, and get my thinking right going into a new year. So anyway, couple opportunities, schoolforrealtors.com, Master FSBOs and Expireds, and davidsfreebook.com. Master Mindset. You rock. There are some people that probably are pretty good at doing the paperwork, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, selling, designing a website if they chose.
For sure.
But mentally, they have to realize that that is limiting where they're able to go.
Yes, absolutely.
They can only do so much themselves. And then in order to grow, get beyond that, we have to bring on other people. I mean, that would be like LeBron. No matter how good he is, he's not going to beat a team of 5 people himself.
Yes, and we're seeing that with Golden State, against Golden State, that has a more well-rounded team and has more talent around them than LeBron does. And that's no slight on him. But when you look back on even the Michael Jordan era, which I'm of the same era that you are, that's who I grew up watching, and then even LeBron, I mean, look back in the days of Jordan. They made sure they always had a sharpshooter, whether it was John Paxson or Steve Kerr. Yeah. They always made sure they had a rebounder, whether it was a Horace Grant or a Bill Cartwright. They made sure they always had an excellent defender. Scottie Pippen is one of the best defenders to ever play the game. So they had people that could do specific tasks to supplement what Jordan was able to do because he was very well-rounded. And it was that supplement. The Bulls kind of built a team like a jigsaw puzzle where everybody had a very specific role and a specific skill set. And then Jordan was kind of the ringleader. The teams that have followed in that suit, whether it's the Spurs or even if you go over to football and you talk about the Patriots, or you go over to baseball and you talk about the Yankees, many of the most successful sports franchises have done the same thing. And the same thing works in business. So when you're first starting out, you probably have to do a little bit of everything because you simply don't have the income to pay others yet. But the moment you do, instead of going and getting a new car or a new watch, you're better off investing that back into people that can take tasks off of your plate that you don't like and or are not good at so that you can spend your time selling.
So you're telling me I'm not supposed to go buy that new Mercedes as soon as I close my first deal?
Not after your first deal. After your 100th deal and you've already paid everybody, then by all means, enjoy the fruits of your labor and enjoy that Mercedes. You deserve it. But it's just a matter of, do you want something that's going to give you short-term satisfaction? And that Mercedes after your first deal could cannibalize your growth and your ability to scale? Or do you want to wait until you have everything in place and then you've actually earned and deserved that Mercedes? I'm all about having the finer things in life.
Yeah, me too, my friend. All right. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you see with salespeople with regards to what we're talking about today? And how do our listeners overcome that challenge?
I think the biggest one is, and I've been mentored by some world-class sales professionals, and one of the first things they told me was telling is not selling. When I've been around inexperienced sales professionals, and we'll keep using selling homes, let's say, as an example, even though, I know almost nothing about it. And when you hear me talk, you'll probably realize that. But to me, a novice salesperson, if I was trying to sell you a home, David, I would start talking about the features and the benefits of this home. Hey, this is how many bedrooms, this is how many baths. And that's pretty basic and standard stuff. But that's stuff you could get off of a brochure or a website.
Absolutely.
A world-class salesperson is going to ask insightful questions of the potential buyer and is going to listen to what they say and be a world-class listener so that they can figure out whether or not this home is a good fit. So I'm going to ask you, what are you looking for in a home? What is most important to you? Do you live by yourself or do you have a family? I want to know, is the neighborhood important? I want to learn everything I can from you because you're going to be feeding me the answers of whether or not this home is a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, then I shouldn't try to sell it to you. I should go find something that is a better fit because it needs to be a win-win. Selling should not be forced. It should not be, I'm trying to make my commission, so hell or high water, I'm getting David to buy this house. Even if I got to trick him into buying it because I need the commission, that's a very short-sighted way of looking at things. Whether if I say my goal is to put David or David and his family into the best house for them so that they are truly happy with their purchase, because then they're going to tell other people that I did that and my business is going to grow organically. So I would want to ask as many questions as possible. And if I keep asking you the right questions, I won't have to convince you to buy that house.
Yeah.
You'll end up convincing yourself.
Amen.
You'll end up saying to yourself, oh my gosh, this is the best house for me. It's the neighborhood that my family's looking for. It's got everything we wanted. This is it. At the end of the day, I'll have told you very little. I will have asked you a lot of questions and you will have convinced yourself that this is the house for you. And next thing you know, we're signing a contract.
It's interesting too that you said, you've never sold a house. You don't know much about it, but yet based on what you just said, if you got your real estate license tomorrow, you would probably outsell a lot of the realtors, unfortunately. Not the ones listening to this podcast, obviously.
Right. But that's just because it's the universal skill of active listening. And it's a skill that I've worked hard to develop because it's the same thing in my business. By trade, I'm a professional speaker. So when I'm talking to meeting planners or people that are looking to bring me in, it's the same thing. When we have our pre-event call, I'm not telling them who else I spoke for or, all of the things that I've done. I'm asking them questions like, what's the most important goal of this meeting that you're having? When the attendees leave after I talk, what is it that you want them to be able to know or do differently? And I just ask them question after question, even things like, I appreciate you reaching out to me, David, about speaking. What is it that makes you think I'm a good fit for your event that you're holding? When I do that, it's funny. You might go on for 3 minutes telling me all of the reasons why I'm the perfect fit for your event. And I don't have to say anything. You're selling me and I'm not even selling me. So at the end of that call, you're like, yeah, Alan is absolutely the right guy. And I didn't have to say anything about myself. It was all about making sure I was a good fit. And even with that, you might start to pick up on, I'm not a high academic guy. I'm a high EQ guy. My emotional intelligence is way higher than my academic intelligence. And the only reason I say that is I'm not a great fit for every audience. I'm not a great fit for high academics, whether they're physicians or professors. So if you were calling up and you were asking about having me as a speaker, and I find out that your audience is mostly made up of physicians and professors, I'm going to bow out gracefully and say, you know what, I'm probably not the best fit, but I've got a colleague that would knock this out of the park for you. Let me introduce you to him, because it doesn't do me any good to come talk to an audience that's not going to resonate with my message any more than it does me good to try to trick you into buying a house that I know is not a good fit for you and your family. It's very, very short-term thinking.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, a couple more questions. Okay. First is, what is the most common trait that unite all high performers, high achievers, and those that are on the path to mastery?
They never get bored with the basics. They understand how important the fundamentals are, and they never get bored with them, and they don't try to skip steps in the process. So if it's a basketball player, they still work on the fundamentals of the game. They still work on their footwork. They work on their shooting mechanics, and they do this all of the time, even after they've become high performers and high achievers. And it's the same thing as we just talked about. If you want to be world-class in sales, you need to practice the fundamentals of actively listening and being a world-class listener, whether it's with your children, your spouse, your colleagues. Just practice that skill. So one thing that unites all high performers, they never get bored with the basics.
Just listening and thinking too. I've taught a lot of people how to sell real estate at a high level. And I see a lot of people that practice scripts, but they never connect to the other part that you're talking about.
Yeah.
The ability to listen and really understand what somebody's motivations are.
I respect scripts and I respect recipes in that regard because I do think they provide structure. But if someone is brand new to sales and they're so dependent on that script, it becomes very one-sided. See, if I ask you a question, I can't possibly know what my next question is going to be until I hear your answer. And if I'm listening, then I can follow up with something insightful. Where many times when people stick to that rigid script, then they're just asking question after question. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm enjoying this conversation with you is you didn't come at me with this list of questions that you were planning to ask. You just lobbed me one and I answered it. And then that made you think of something else. And we've just been doing this two-person dance. And we're able to have what I think is a very effective and beneficial interview and conversation just because we're playing off of one another.
Yeah.
And really, sales should be no different. The script should just be, you have kind of some questions that are good to ask people, and then you just have to wait and hear what their response is.
Absolutely.
And that takes practice. That takes growth and maturity and a raising of the emotional IQ. But I think those will be your world-class sales professionals.
I'm going to throw this out there because listening, going back to the basketball, when these guys practice at that level, and I think it's the same in sales, it's similar to scripts, right? You practice free throw after free throw after layup, so that when it comes time on the court and it's in full speed and you're in the game, you don't have to think about that.
Yes.
It happens almost naturally. And it's the same with the scripts. You have to practice those scripts so much so that you internalize them, so that when you're in front of somebody, you don't have to think about, oh my God, what do I say? You already know what to say. Now you can be present with the person.
Absolutely.
Right? It's the same.
Yeah, you nailed that absolutely perfectly. And I'll even take it a step further and say that most of that practice can be done through role playing. I'm a huge believer that when it comes to sales professionals, most don't do role playing when they should. I mean, that is in essence practicing. I mean, talk about taking it a step up from just reading your script or even going old school and using a hairbrush as a pretend microphone and looking in the mirror to practice. We should practice. If you and I are buddies and we're both sales professionals, you and I should take turns. One person's the buyer and one person's the seller, and intentionally come up with different scenarios, game-like scenarios that might be difficult. So, if I ask you this, David, and your answer is this, well, what would be my best response, or what would be my best follow-up question? And the more that you can practice, the better. The more game-like you can make your role playing, the better you'll perform when it is game time. And once again, the sales organizations I've had a chance to work with, they incorporate role playing in regularly. Like, hey, every Monday morning, we're going to do 30 minutes of role playing. Everybody's going to partner up. I'm going to pass out some different scenarios on cards and practice it. And at first, it might feel a little corny. It might feel a little cliche. Some people might feel really uncomfortable, but over time, that's how you practice and that's how you get better. I don't want the first time I'm hearing a scenario to be when a $5 million house is on the line.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't want that to be the first time. I want it to be the 50th time. And I'm so prepared for this. I'm so thankful that was your answer because I'm ready.
No doubt. All right. So how do our listeners get in touch with you, Alan?
If they're interested in the book, they can go to raiseyourgamebook.com. And if they're interested in anything else I do, if they want to have me come in and speak to their sales organization, they can just go to alansteinjr.com. And I'm on all social platforms at Alan Stein Jr.
Alan, final question on Path to Mastery. What is the one thing that everybody listening to this episode or interview should do with relation to what we talked about today on their path to mastery?
They should acknowledge the fact that in order for them to master whatever they're trying to master, their bucket has to be full. They have to make sure that they take care of themselves first. And they define what that means, whether they're talking mentally, emotionally, or physically. As I alluded to earlier, I believe that all three are intertwined. So if you want to be the best you can be at selling homes, then it's important that you're mentally, emotionally, and physically fit so that you'll have the energy to be able to do that at a high level. I think if people can start to pour into themselves as an act of service to others, that's a great first step to being on the path to mastery.
Love it, my friend. Well, hey, I just want to say I appreciate your time and look forward to connecting again in the near future.
Likewise, I appreciate you.
Masters, if you know me, you know health and nutrition is number one, and that's why I'm an advisor for Advocare products. Listen, in my opinion, these are the best products on the planet, guys. You get what you're supposed to get, right? I use the products for health. I use the products for energy. I use the products for wellness. So we have all the different lines from Spark, starting your day with a great energy shot, all the way to pre-workout. It's whatever your goals are, right? It's whatever your goals are. You can check out the products at www.livelongersmarter.com. That's my website. Or reach out to me, and I'd love to have a 30-minute or, anywhere from 15 to 30-minute conversation with you, just talking about your health and nutrition goals and what I can do to help you achieve those goals. So again, products, energy line, or wellness line, whether it's joints, you're getting up there in the age, you just want to take care of yourself. I'll tell you, one of the greatest compliments I get is people, you say, wow, you look amazing. I cannot believe you are the age you are. Weight loss. I've helped lots of people, guys, lose weight, not just lose it, but keep it off with the products. And the cool thing is, I'd say 75% of the people who start with our products, they continue using our products even after they initially tried them, which has been amazing. And strength, if you're into bodybuilding, then hey, Rich Fronin, okay? I don't know if you know who Rich Fronin is. He's an advocate for Advocare as well. So amazing products. You can see us. We're featured on NASCAR, professional soccer, college basketball, college football, Men's Health magazine last month. These are the real deal, guys. LiveLongerSmarter.com is the website, or reach out to me if you, like I said, if you want to have a personal conversation with me, just send me an email. In the subject line, just put Advocare products, and I'd love, like I said, schedule a 15 to 30-minute call with you to talk about your health and nutrition goals. Guys, you rock. Live longer, smarter. And as Gary Keller eloquently said, if you don't take care of your body, where are you gonna live? You rock.
You are listening to One More Sale with your host, David I. Hill, author of the Sales Playbook. Get your copy at www.thesalesplaybook.net.